No, it's just pine trees. And the funny thing is, like here in Texas, I'm from Tennessee, so like here in Texas, every time someone sees that and they hear my accent, you know, they're like, "Is that bullets?" I'm like, "Wow, you just assume stuff, man." They just assume because I'm like got this accent that I'm a gun-toting American conservatives that come. They're right. They're right.
Never would have guessed it.
And that's the moment Davio left the building. Just kidding.
Elvis is into it.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's yeah, everybody always thinks it's bullets. I don't know why. I guess it's just the accent.
I thought it looked like Christmas trees.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're a little bit closer. Most people, they're just kind of like walking up to me. They just kind of glance at it. You're like sitting there like intently staring at it. So, oh man. Yeah.
I thought it was Bhagavan trees because Will has the same hat.
Spiritual
When you sit under the Bhagavan tree, then you understand the real truth.
Oh man.
It's the light.
Are we starting yet? Is this?
Yes, we
Yeah, we are. Yeah. So, do you want to tell them who I am, or do you just want to leave them guessing the whole time?
We can just come or stumble upon it.
I love it.
Let it be.
Yeah, let it be.
Yeah, let it roll.
Yeah.
Sometimes informality and works best. Imperfection is beautiful.
As always, I'm Davio. This is Dr. Suave or Federico for those who don't know. And then
I have a Latino audience.
we actually decided we needed a younger demographic, so we decided to bring our producer Chandler on. Everybody,
We call him Bing.
if you're wondering at the end of all our podcasts when we keep getting mad, that's because Chandler's in our ears telling us we got to wrap it up, and I got to try to make Fred wrap it up, and that's like wrangling a
Y'all act like I get joy out of that. Like I don't get joy out of telling you I wrap it up, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when we're on a roll, it's best to let it go.
Maybe you should get on the roll when you start the podcast instead of
That's a great idea. All right, we are. Someone had a question that had a medical side to it recently.
Okay.
I saw a patient today who came in, young guy, okay, in his 20s, and he said, "Look, doc, the reason I'm here, I just got married, came back from the honeymoon, I didn't do well." I go, "Please elaborate." As if I needed further.
You don't.
It's good.
You're a doctor. You don't watch soap operas during the day. This is your soap opera.
Yeah.
You know.
There you go.
He doesn't need to watch soap operas. He gets more dirt from his patients.
I do. First he said, this is like very embarrassing. I said, "Oh, this happens to a lot of older men, not as much in your decade of life.
Yeah.
But it does happen." He says, "Well, maybe it was the alcohol, maybe the stress, it was lack of sleep." I go, "It's all those things, but it's a lot more than that." So I said to him, to his face, "You're a porn addict, aren't you?"
You knew.
He thought I was going to say, "Oh, you're a diabetic, you have high blood pressure, you smoke, you drink too much, maybe your blood pressure is up." He wasn't expecting that curveball.
Wow.
That slider that buckles at your knees.
Was he there? Was his wife there or just him?
No, just him. Just him. And
Well, at least he's coming on his own. It's not his wife being like, "Hey, I need you to take care of the dog."
He is coming on his own. That's the problem. No pun intended. But he made the appointment on his own.
Chandler, you're a natural. You set that joke up perfect.
Yeah. I mean, he set it up. It had to be batted away, right? So, the key is...
What was his reaction when you asked him?
Well, he was a bit in shock, but he was... Look, I know it's okay.
He couldn't deny it.
Yeah. He stumbled in his response because he wasn't expecting. But at the same time, upon seeing the shock on his face from me making that statement, I said, "I'm not here to judge you.
Yeah.
I'm here to help you. So let's peel back a little bit. When did you get married? How long have you been dating? And how long have you, prior to dating this woman, what was your experience? Because you're fairly young. How old are you? 26. Dating 4 years. Post-college. Great. Love of my life. Great. When did you start with your addiction? Online? He goes, since I was grade 9, maybe grade 8. How did that happen? Well, everybody did it I was just curious. And,
That's how it all starts.
it became a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
Right? And our buddies, we go to each other's houses, play video games, maybe watch some sports, get a, snack or whatever. And someone undoubtedly would go, hey, check this out, and laugh about it. But then I would laugh and go along with it, but then I would carry on when I went home. So it became a nightly routine for him, a way to not only achieve stress relief. I said, okay, let's...
Because that turns into a cycle.
Yeah, a complete cycle.
Yeah.
Well, it's a dopamine addiction, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, because I've talked about this with a lot of people before, people who don't know me. That's a big part of my story is I dealt with pornography addiction. I'm still recovering from pornography addiction, and thank the good Lord above, it's been since mid-December since I've looked at a pornographic image. And I'm just...
Well, I would consider the food you were eating earlier sort of fast food pornography, dude.
Yeah, to an extent. And that's something I've actually been struggling with. It's just it's like comfort, like,
food.
just like going and like immediately getting off of work.
So we just had some technical difficulties, and while we were off camera, you were explaining in detail,
Otherwise called the bathroom break.
The details of
For
your
old men.
what exactly you were into, but
No,
we don't
y'all were fantasizing about
you
what
don't
the
need
details I was.
you don't need to get into that. But
Yeah.
you were discussing Fred. So this guy wasn't able to
Perform during his honeymoon.
because of his. How did you know that was why?
Because the guy walks in, he's about 6'2", weighs 175 pounds with probably 4% body fat, with a normal blood pressure for his age, 100/60.
So a pure
With
specimen just walking in.
An athlete.
Yeah.
Who says he can't perform. So my checklist for people who have erectile dysfunction is, please, we need to first know.
First, they have to be a man.
That's a
That's a good
assertion.
good starting point.
No, that's the first click.
That's the right.
You have
Yes.
to have the right apparatus. So clearly, age matters because as we get older, when we shall discuss at some point, we lose nitric oxide and testosterone synthesis, which both impact at least the mechanical, physiologic aspect of an erection. I'm not talking about the mental or the connectivity, the spiritual, the love.
The Bhagavan.
The Bhagavan, right. The secret sauce, right? So from a pure checklist, hypertension, smoke, yes, no, prediabetes, diabetes, cholesterol issues, and prior, trauma, prior issues, radiation exposure, prior, what is called cryptorchidia and other issues related to testicular malfunction. Okay?
And he was good at all that stuff.
He did not check any of those.
So that's how you knew.
So in a 56-year-old man, they're going to go, oh, I have hypertension, I smoke, I, have prediabetes and all of those.
So was this the last thing on the list?
So the last thing on the list
Was pornography.
by quick 5-second analysis was, you have a porn addiction. And he said, I do.
Which is crazy because most people, when they're addicted to pornography, can hide it so well.
Right.
Not from Sherlock Holmes,
Okay,
Dr. Suave over here.
So let me say 90% of people with erectile dysfunction over 40, their issue is not pornography. It's a cardiovascular issue. But the overwhelming majority of people under 30, it's a psychological issue, mental health issue, or a porn addiction. And very few are cardiovascular in nature as the cause.
For the younger.
For the younger generations, let's say under 35 or so. So it's a flip, right? In the older ones, it's cardiovascular disease, 90%, 10% psychological, a little bit of porn, perhaps, yes. In the younger ones, is the opposite.
Gotcha. Yeah. And
So it's a real easy one when you're an experienced cardiovascular specialist to go, you have a porn addiction. And if the guy says, you throw out the hook, it's got a little bait, and the guy goes, boom.
Well, you could tell from his reaction,
Yes.
What is porn? What is porn? What is, get that beneath me. Like, what is that? Ugh,
Second thing is open up your phone. He goes, I don't have to. That's it. Yeah. So what happened? He says, well, I just have this fantasy world in my life, and I have an addiction that the only one that can satisfy, because the grip of a hand can never be equaled by the grip of a vagina.
Yeah.
No matter how many Kegels she does.
No matter how many Kegel exercises, no matter how many sprints or stairs or other such, gymnastic.
I'm not shaking my head at you. I'm shaking my head at all my relatives that are going to listen to this podcast and be like, "What is he? Where is he at?" Like,
well, this is called.
He went to the big city.
Podcast.
He went to Big D, and he can't look what happened to him.
This is
Babylon.
This is not.
He descended.
This is not about perdition.
Yeah.
Or a lack of seriousness. It's actually about trying to understand realities.
Well, I mean, I've experienced, and I haven't actually shared this with a lot of people.
Until you
maybe
did it
one or
on
two
a
people.
national podcast.
But no, to our four listeners.
Well, yeah, to our four listeners. Well, for me though, like I've gotten a lot more comfortable in the past few months in sharing my story. Like I used to be so embarrassed by my story. And
it's very common though.
Yeah, and I found
You know
out
what
it's
the
more
percentage
common.
is?
With what?
You've done some research, right?
With
Percentage of men that have a porn
under
addiction.
30, yeah, under 30.
oh yeah,
It's 100%.
yeah, it's 100%. Like what is
No.
they went to go do the study.
Wait.
Yeah, it's like they went to go do the study and they were
And they
trying
couldn't
to find,
complete the study because the guys are too busy.
They couldn't find control. They couldn't find controls.
Well, they were only searching guys between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m.
Yeah.
In junior
What
high,
are the statistics though? Seriously,
It's about 25%.
200%.
That have a serious addiction.
25.
Whereby it's once or twice a day, 5 or more days a week.
Now,
That's 25%.
to be clear,
Now, it's a graded.
porn is different from just masturbating.
No, correct. This is about
Right.
having to use porn
Right,
to
right.
get off, or just watching it for the sake of stimulation.
Because masturbation, as a cardiologist, isn't masturbation actually healthy for you in moderate doses?
It has been shown to be a good release of stress, and to help men to decrease aggression, and to be a
And it makes your sperm healthier too, right?
I don't know about that.
refresh it.
no, that's not
Nah, I'm
necessarily-
pretty sure that I read that.
Yeah,
in
well,
the
maybe you can bring
Scientific
us some
American.
data. But the point is, in this regard of using porn as
But
a
the porn
stimulant, as
aspect-
a sole stimulant,
Because of the accumbens numen, how do you say them? Numbus accumbens?
very close. Nucleus accumbens.
The
I thought you knew Greek.
I do.
Yeah, not this word. So, in any case, the hardcore is 25%. There's probably another 25% to maybe 30, 40% that say I don't have a problem with it, but they're still doing it with some regularity. 3-5 times a week for sure, and use it as an avoidance for a date or getting together with their female friend.
Well, I mean,
for
it's like
example.
it's like being a gamer. Like this is a sure thing.
Yes.
Right, like why? I mean,
It's a win.
and I'm a
It's a
Christian,
win.
so I don't go do the hookup culture. I don't, I'm saving myself from it. That's personally what I believe. But even when I look at it from this way, like there are a lot of guys out there that they go out and they go to bars or hang out or like they would rather be at home because like think about this: you're going through all this evening, all this stuff you're doing, right? When it's just easier to just stay in
and spending money as well.
It's spending money, and it's just easier. And like for me, like I got past, for me, I don't go out and do like a I go out and dance. I do, but I'm not looking for those.
There is a convenience aspect you bring. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
There is to some degree a laziness about it because it's the lazy cop out way because it really doesn't require much effort. Whereas socializing with someone in a significant fashion requires you to be hopefully on your best behavior, to be a gentle man or gentle woman, depending on who you are, and to be genuine about it and authentic.
Yeah.
Porn requires none of it. It's inauthentic. It's a lie. There's no connection with anything. It's a lazy and yet it does provide a quick endorphin dopamine high, short-lived, but it's a trap,
Yeah.
and it's an addictive trap.
Yeah.
Because each time you delve more into it, you close the door.
Yeah. And I could get into my story at some point, but when I first got to Dallas, and that was back around Thanksgiving of last year, I was going through like one of the deepest, darkest holes I'd ever been in my life. And I was recovering from being a pornography addict, being addicted to lust, being addicted to masturbation, those kind of things. So one of the things I found really, really healthy for me, now it may not be everybody's, it may be triggering to some. One thing I found healthy for me was I just started going out. I'd never really been out. I really didn't go out to bars or anything like that. I just started going out like two-stepping because it forced me to see the people I danced with as not these people on a screen, not these objects.
Exactly.
But
real human beings.
Real human beings. And it was the healthiest thing I think I did besides, really, going after this from a spiritual aspect.
Right.
It was probably one of the healthiest practical things I did.
And what compelled you to do that, which was a great move.
Yeah.
Great move.
Yeah. Well, my friends kind of just pulled me out. And I was kind of skeptical because I was afraid.
So you got invited
Yeah,
and you took
yeah.
the opportunity.
But I was very skeptical because I was afraid that I was going to get triggered and it was going to cause me to stumble back into that because I'm seeing all these, sensory things around me. I look around, I see all these women, and I just see, of course, you go like two-stepping or something like that in Dallas, like there's not very much clothes on. Okay, let's just be honest with you. A lot of times,
Well, that's relative.
yeah, it's relative. I mean,
Right.
it depends on which one you're going to. But for me, it was very hard. It wasn't very hard going out. It actually was so easy for me to flip that switch and not see them in that way.
Right.
Because then I started to have a conversation with them, started to get to know them, And
a very healthy way
and
to
it
go
is
about
very
it.
healthy. And I think a lot of people kind of say, "Oh, don't go out and do this. Don't go out." With alcohol, that may be the case. You don't need to go out to a bar and drink
Of
if you're an
course.
alcoholic, right? Because that's just pulling in. But with pornography, it's such a different monster to handle because here's the thing: you can't just quit sex. You can't just
Of
quit.
course.
Until you get married.
Lusting, and well, for me, it's the other way around.
Hopefully not.
You quit sex until you get married, and then you
Yeah.
quit sex.
Well,
Yeah.
Chandler, I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
I finished that. You quit. I was like, I don't. Yeah. I mean, I hope
But
the Lord will bless me with
Here are
with
two
someone.
things that
yeah.
went your way, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You were a little bit older.
Show me the neurological on this. Yeah.
So, when you're 14, 15, 16, 17, and your friends perhaps don't know the side of you because there reaches a point where it's just a secret
Yeah.
parallel life, covertly done. Your parents don't know.
Yeah.
In addition,
Especially in our society, there's a lot of shame in
Absolutely.
that whole.
Yeah.
Unlike in Greek society where it's not
Yeah.
promoted.
It's more open.
Well, it's not promoted, but it's put in its proper place.
and it's accepted
It's
that it happens.
in Greek culture, you use the term masturbation when you're saying you're bored. What did you don't say what were you doing?
Right.
You don't say, "Oh, I was bored." You say, "Oh, I was masturbating."
Right.
So it's not shamed. It's also not elevated as something
Right.
to promote. It's like the baseline of if you have nothing else to do, you can do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there should be guilt behind something, but not shame.
Well, there isn't guilt. It's just
Yeah.
it's just
Well-
not the best use of your time.
No, it's not. But what I'm saying is like there's a difference between guilt and shame.
Right.
Like, knowing what you did was like not the best for you.
Exactly.
And having that shame of not like for me that was probably the reason that I got on this good track was, and we'll probably get into this in a minute, was just because I started opening up to people about it.
Yes.
And I realized there was no shame in falling to those kinds of sins.
Right.
Right. Not to say we should continue in that thing.
No, it's not
there was no
ideal.
shame in that.
Again,
Yeah.
Right.
at the age where you were able to make a move in the right direction was a lot different than a 15, 16,
Yeah,
17-year-old
absolutely.
who is going to keep hiding it and not admit it.
Yeah.
And then they go into as I said, a parallel lifestyle that involves isolation. So you got to a point where, okay, you had a tough time in your life and then you realize this is the wrong way. But at 25, 26, your brain has almost finished maturing.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is a critical step. You weren't doing drugs, you weren't doing alcohol, you weren't doing anything that might delay the proper maturing of your brain.
So
Which,
I
of
do
course,
have-
at 25, 26 for most.
So I do have a question about
Yeah.
that. And this is just me personally asking a question. Like, so someone who dealt with pornography and was, I would say I was addicted to it from the time I was probably I was introduced about 12, about 13, 14, I was probably addicted to it, everyday kind of thing, until probably about 2 years ago. And I started 2 or 3 years ago, I started really fighting against it. So in the developing brain, how much does that factor in? You know, we talk about alcohol and drugs and stuff like that. How much does that factor into a developing brain? How much damage can that do? And because, I mean, basically my entire developing life, I've been addicted to pornography.
Right.
Right.
So it can impair proper connectivity
Okay.
to human beings.
Okay.
And seeing people
Just in general or with relationships?
With relationships.
Okay.
To healthy relationships.
Gotcha.
You should have already had 2 or 3 friends who were females, healthy relationships that you could joke with, meet out at restaurants, go for coffee, or be part of sports teams together, play co-ed basketball or baseball, the typical things, softball that people do in a very healthy way. But the pornography impedes those. So it delays proper relationships. And I think that's what happened to my patient. So when he says, this is the love of my life, it's because probably for the first time, he was recognizing I have a porn addiction, but I need to get out of it. I just don't know how. Yeah. He didn't have in his late teens or early 20s when he met this girl and started dating more seriously in college.
Right.
He still didn't have the entire mental psychological maturity to be able to make the quick jump to say, I'm done with it. Yeah. And gather around him the proper support group without judgmentalism or moralizing. Yeah. So someone who wouldn't shame him. And he couldn't tell the girl, hey, by the way, oh, you don't want to have sex? Oh, I'm great. We can wait until we get married, which is great.
Until you get married.
But I'm doing this on the side.
Here's the thing. Like
and then it doesn't work because he
people,
can't have the excitement and the connectivity.
Because she's not tied up with 3 guys on her, which is what he's into.
Well, and here's the thing too.
Like we were discussing, you know.
Like the brand he was discussing. Yeah.
Lord, I apologize. Lord, just pour down your spirit on this podcast. But here's the thing. Like I always tell people when they talk to me, what is pornography? What's addiction to pornography? I said, listen, it's not an addiction actually to pornography.
No.
It's an addiction to variety.
Correct.
That's what you're doing. You're treating your brain. It's like, you know, it's people say, oh, you know, dating the way we do it in modern society is training your brain for divorce sometimes. Right? Because it's training you when everything's get tough, get out. Yeah. And so when you get married, it's the same thing with pornography. You get in there and you don't, okay, Davio, have you ever watched pornography?
I have looked at pornography before. Lady Hamilton.
We don't have an honest person on this podcast.
So, no, of course.
But, no.
The extremism.
Okay, so
I have. I'm being honest. I have.
When you go to watch it, did you always go back to the same clip?
So I'm a different case. I never had a particular fascination with pornography. The most I ever
just found it disgusting from the get go.
No. I never found it disgusting. I found it. It's almost like strip clubs.
Just like ugh.
Afterwards,
yeah.
One of the things that I'm lucky about is when it comes to any kind of addictive substance, to me, it's not the moment itself. I always feel the after effects, and that's really helped me not be addicted to
it.
Stuff that's been. So the moment of watching it, obviously, it's great, and I've seen, especially in college, some friends had some. I've seen porn,
all kinds
but I never
became obsessed with.
Wanted to go. I would rather go find the real deal.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, though. When you go, and I'll kind of let y'all step into the world of someone who's addicted to pornography. When you go to do that, you know, even if it's a daily thing, even if you're not doing it like every hour, like if you're doing it like a daily thing,
right, sure,
you're not going to the same clip every day because eventually that dopamine level starts to drop.
Sure.
And so you need to cross that red line.
Right.
It's kind of like when you're in a car, right? And that RPM, that rotations per minute, right? It goes up and up and there's that red line, and you know you can go above that red line and not really damage the car, but you don't want to do that for a long time. And so you keep going to that red line, and you keep getting close to that red line until something breaks.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what you do with pornography. You go to this is not doing it for me. Like, I mean, it would probably for me be like twice I could watch the same clip and then I would have to go to something else. I would have to do something that's,
as you said, the variety is necessary. And it becomes extreme.
And so if you take that into marriage, what are you training yourself to do? You're training yourself to cheat. You're training yourself to not be satisfied with monogamy.
All my friends, and I'm not going to name any names, but you know who you are, the ringmaster. I had friends that
the diver.
Well, that's what he called himself, the ringmaster, and he would find these girls that were willing to do the things that he saw in the videos.
Right.
But eventually, it would get
boring.
When and a human being who's not under camera, doesn't have fluffers, can only do so much. And these poor girls afterwards were like traumatized.
Yes.
And he was not satisfied either, because it was the same situation where I joke with you, but he would get more and more depraved porn to turn himself on. And then how can the girl compete with?
And it was just pretend anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But for his own egocentric view of this extreme need for quick dopamine highs that only extreme variety could give him, and each time escalating in nature. So that vicious cycle destroys and impedes your ability to be able to connect in reality with someone one-on-one, and to, if you look at it from, Christian and other religions too, but the one I know, a Christian connection with the husband and the wife become one. And you cannot do it when pornography is in between.
Because your mind is not there.
And your ability to truly devote 100% of your being to become, as God would say, the two become one.
Yeah.
And that unification is impossible.
And that can't be based on sex. That can't be completely based on sex.
No.
I know you know that.
The connection is not primarily a sexual one.
Exactly.
But that is a part of it as well.
Yeah, it's a part of it, but it's not the pillar.
Well, it's
that makes it succeed. You have to connect first, emotionally, spiritually, lovingly, and then the sex becomes.
But so many people start with
most. Adds the glue that keeps it going.
So the porn keeps the person distracted, basically.
Cannot connect mentally, emotionally to that person. So the sex can never glue it together.
Yeah.
When you try to use sex as the glue, it falls. It doesn't adhere. Like some of the panels in this station.
Well, to an extent, if you use it in the right context, it can make a relationship stronger. That's what it's meant to do.
But it cannot be the primary force.
It can't get the adhesive. It's like putting two
the
pieces of paper
adhesive
together.
of mental, emotional, spiritual, heart-to-heart connection can never occur when sex is what brought you together. That's why hookup culture doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's a fallacy. It's a complete fallacy.
And this is not like just a Christian thing. It's not just like conservative, like, keep your pants on. This is like true, like neurological, cardiovascular, all that.
And I grew up as a teenager at a time when there was considered free love, pre-HIV, where STDs weren't a big deal.
Post-penicillin, pre-HIV.
Yes.
The golden age.
The golden age, yeah. Whereby, the free love and so on. And, looking for love in strange places, looking to be adored, using sex as that glue, and it doesn't work. It falls apart. It doesn't sustain. It's not a sustainable way to create a relationship. And so young people today
are having less sex than ever.
And when they're part of a hookup culture, especially young women, they're sabotaging their ability to really, build their own self-esteem, to truly understand that connection is first a spiritual mind and heart. Then the sex grows out of that.
You're sounding more and more like Bhagavan.
Well, you can extend that out to just the physical appearance of someone, because truly, that's what sex is an extension of, is like truly like the physical, like attraction, like the animal into. Because here's the thing: when you start to look at the attraction level of someone, how you're attracted to them. I had a buddy of mine back in New Mexico. His name was Sam, and we had very deep conversations about this. He's like, here's the reason that Tinder doesn't work. Because you have probably 75% of women, right? You have all these women on Tinder.
No, it's 75% men on Tinder.
Well, no, but the
25% women.
Well, what I'm saying is the 75% of women that are on Tinder, right?
Okay.
They're picking the top 10% of guys.
5-10%. That's it.
And so
the rest are not getting,
and so you're not getting
attention.
Yeah, exactly. And so these are the top 75%.
Let's be clear. Let's do the math. 75% of 25% is
it's 18%.
18%.
Yeah.
So that 18 is picking up the top 5% of men.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is
from a looks, from a physical,
which is 7% of the men
of the people on there. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing, because like it's like the women on like those kind of apps, like not all apps like that, because I think Hinge is probably the best app.
And to be clear, it's not looks.
On Tinder?
No.
Tinder, it is looks.
No, it's not just looks. It's socioeconomic,
There's-
pictures. Does he have a boat? It's not just women.
It is, but at the same time, it's like that's where it starts.
physicality. Plays.
Right, but-
that's where it starts.
You're
Like
saying-
that's the first. That's why I got. That's one of the reasons I got off Tinder.
In a
was
blink
one,
of an eye,
Yes.
that's what its attraction. And then
Right.
you see if the guy's well off,
Right.
etc.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. And so you're talking about even in this society, it's like not only are men lonely and they have pornography to go to,
Correct.
to fill that void, quote
Right.
unquote, that nothing can fill but the Lord.
And your
Almighty.
generation's having less sex
Yeah.
than ever in the history of mankind.
Exactly,
And less
But-
spiritualness.
But what? Yeah, less spiritualness. Why is that? Because now, because of dating apps, the women on dating apps are basically saying like, I want the top 10% of
Yeah.
men. Which back in here, if you go back 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, 80s, 90s, most people. I mean, even at that point, how many people? Okay, so there's a good chance, probably about a 90% chance that you were going to marry someone that lived within a 20-mile radius of
Right.
where you were born.
Correct. Yep. True.
It's crazy to me.
Now we have a world.
Now you're more likely, I would say, I don't know, I'm not
8
saying
billion
statistics,
people.
You're more likely to marry someone outside of your state than you are inside of your state.
No, you're more likely
Yes.
to marry nobody and just masturbate.
Well, I mean, if you're
To
going
porn.
to, if you're, well, I mean,
But
you
if
are,
you,
yeah.
if you
But-
do get married,
yeah, so
he's
you have
right.
so many more options. So the women
Right.
see that as I have so many more options. I'm going to go with this top 10%. I'm not even going to look at these other guys, even though they got good qualities, even though they may not be a 10 out of 10. They may even be an 8. It looks wise.
And once you get to know
and
them, they
actually,
may be-
they're a 10 out
Right.
of 10 with the character, but we look
Yes.
so much at that.
Correct.
And I had to stop getting on Tinder, one, because I was addicted to pornography. And it was leading me to these bad places. You know,
Right.
I ended up having I lost my virginity to a one-night stand.
Yeah, searching
Yeah.
the wrong
Do you have her number?
goals.
Her number? No.
I told him he's Greek.
Yeah. So, but so like to
I
me,
got a buddy in town.
and that's
That's
a very traumatic way.
Asking for a friend.
Well, I mean, honestly, for me though, that was a very traumatic way to lose my virginity.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because-
Especially with all you've gone through.
All that I've gone through, yes, because honestly, and like I said, this is the part I haven't really shared with anybody, but like that night, like I was having PIED, which is porn-induced erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
I literally
Exactly.
could not get it
Well,
up.
function, yeah.
Yeah, and like I talk about this, like that was a bad night for me, and that's something I shouldn't have walked into. Knowing
Yeah.
my faith and knowing what what I live for and what I preached about, and being a pastor at some point. But if I'm looking back at that point from a purely like neurological health standpoint, like I couldn't.
Yeah.
And what I literally had to do is and this is going to sound awful, but I literally had to walk into the other room, pull up pornography.
To be able to get excited.
Exactly.
So pornography.
And that's when I knew I
let
had
me,
a
Let me
problem.
say one other thing.
Yeah.
That goes with it. So pornography actually decreases your serotonin
Mm-hmm.
and causes you to be more depressed.
Yeah, it does.
And
It does. It's a vicious cycle.
And so it becomes far less, your arousal is far more difficult
Mm-hmm.
when with a physical woman that you have no connection to. Because I assume you didn't have a true connection with that person. that
No,
one
it
night.
was just a
Yeah.
one night stand. Like,
Correct.
and I feel bad
So-
about saying that. I don't even know
so
her name, number,
depression-
anything. Sorry, Davio.
the isolation,
That's all right.
for the 90+% of men.
You said
that
you
are
found
not
her on
paying
Tinder?
attention.
I'll find her.
All right.
Moving on.
Yeah. So moving on. So the vast majority of men who are not getting attention on the dating apps, the isolation that creates, the poor self-esteem.
And to be clear, if every man on the dating app got one woman,
then
3/4 of the men would still have nobody.
correct. It's a
Because
huge
there's not
number.
there's just
Not
not as
enough.
many
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
And then, but it's a vicious cycle that goes around, and it unfortunately results in more despair, diseases of despair.
Well, because used to the
and,
men
and porn is one of the
yeah,
diseases of despair.
men had the choice. I mean, not
Porn
to-
addiction, that is.
I mean, well, men had the choice in women for a while. It's like when you talk about, you go to like an alpha.
Well, I don't know. I read Greek mythology. I don't think they've ever had the
Well,
choice.
I mean, when you look back compared to now,
No.
20, 30 years ago, maybe back in the 90s, 80s, guys probably had a better selection as far as like, and I hate to put it that way, but like they probably had options where now they don't have options. They are one of the options.
Well, there was
Right.
more
No,
socialization.
there was just more opportunity.
more, because
Yeah.
you had the school dances
In public,
and
yeah.
everybody went.
And,
There was
and
no
people were out
phone,
drinking. There was higher
Right.
alcohol
Yeah.
usage.
and
And people
More
at the dance were socially awkwardly dealing with each other, not looking at their
Right.
phone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They interacted. They had a
That's
conversation.
how they learned to deal
So-
with each other. Was going to those kind
Yes.
of events. Like, yeah.
But those are all healthy
Yeah, they
ways
are.
to meet someone. And then, you would see them at the store, you'd see them by your school, and
Mm-hmm.
then the conversation would grow.
Yeah.
So more of a natural environment and not distracted with all the social media and all the globalism that we have in terms of what you mentioned earlier of having a world of potential partners. But the other aspect of it, at least from a male perspective, that has caused a tremendous problem today is our obsession with the celebrity class, which adds a further element of unattainability.
This is
So-
where you get like the OnlyFans kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You're lucky that
Horrific.
you got over your addiction before.
Oh, I didn't. I caught the. And I'll be honest with you. I caught the tail end of it. I'm glad I didn't because I would have lost probably so much money.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you. I'm admitting on my relatives going to have me. I did spend money on that at some point in my life because I was so desperate for that high, you know, and like that's kind of what
you
you're
felt
talking about.
that was the only road.
I felt like that was the only road. I mean, here I was.
So you're going to the only
Yeah.
private views.
Yeah.
In that isolation, now you're in a.
Did
They
you
have you. It's like an addiction for your crack. It's no different than a gambling addiction where you're now okay, who's going to score the first point? Who's going to win the tip off? Who scores the most point in the first minute? Like you're betting on nonsense.
Did you ever go to strip clubs?
No, I've never been to a strip club. I never went.
That
to
wasn't
one.
his thing.
Don't go.
No, I won't. And I always.
You think porn's addictive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I made that decision a long time ago. I knew how bad porn was me. I was just like, I would never walk in there. It just seems so sleazy to me anyway, just like,
Well,
not for the people that go in, but I mean, it just feels
no,
like, ugh.
people love
Just
it, but
an ick.
it's the same feeling to me as with porn.
Yeah. And so I would,
Afterwards,
yeah.
I don't know.
You just feel kind of disgusting. You feel like you need a shower afterwards.
I wouldn't even put it like that. It just
Yeah.
wasn't satisfying.
Yeah.
It leaves you. It's the tease.
Yeah.
It's all hat, no cattle.
Yeah, I would have never. And honestly, like I made that decision. Like I had a friend one time about me. I was like, no. Even though I was going through that, even though I
that
probably
wasn't
was,
him.
it would just been awful. And that's the Lord's kindness right there that He kept me from ever walking in there. Go ahead.
But nevertheless, once
Yeah.
someone goes through these critical times of what we had, the pandemic, COVID-19, isolated even further, right? So a lot of men became incredibly depressed over these times for obvious reasons, even less socialization. If they were already into the porn, they became even more so with less outlets for socialization, right?
Yeah.
So now we're coming out of it. So you realize, okay, I have this problem. I want to face it, look at the bull by the horns. I get help. I talk to somebody that can give me some guidance, whether medical,
may talk through my
spiritual,
process?
yeah, or a friend. So in your case, as a more mature person, what would you tell a 17, 18, 19-year-old who's
That's a great question.
10 years younger than you and yet has been addicted to porn for 5 years?
I'm going to tell them the same thing I would not have listened to when I was their age. And I didn't listen to when I was their age. And I was told multiple times. I can't tell you how many conferences I went to, how many preachers that talk about it. Well, there's not a lot that will talk about it. But when they do talk about it, they're like, you know what? Like,
I thought he was going to, well, there's one that talks about it.
yeah. No. But like,
The Catholic priest kept
And he-
wanting to talk about it a lot.
in his private chambers.
He wanted me to have a private conversation about it and show him which way.
That's not.
we're not going down that route.
Stereotypical road.
Oh man, but the thing was like I can't tell you how many times I heard this. It was like just open up, just tell somebody, not just someone. Tell your you're like go like at 16, 17 year old. There's nothing more terrifying than saying, hey, go tell your parent that you have pornography addiction.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Like there's nothing more terrifying than that. And so like I wish that I would have listened to that because. My family knew nothing really. I kind of mentioned like, hey, I dealt with it a little bit, and I never really got over it, so I never really talked about it. And I remember the night that I was telling you about where I lost my virginity in a one-night stand. I remember the next day I was in such a deep depressive hole,
Right.
because I want you to put me in my shoes real quick. I was a minister. I was a youth leader at that point.
Yeah.
And I'd been preaching against don't fall into this. Don't do literally preaching it. I was the biggest hypocrite there was. And I'm literally preaching this. And then literally here I am sitting at the crossroads of what I've been preaching.
Tremendous conflict.
And so it was a tremendous conflict. It was just the deepest, darkest hole I've ever been in. One of 2 deep, dark holes I've been in my life that God pulled me out of. And I remember calling my mom the next day. And I talked to my mom about everything. And I was just like...
Even about this?
I did that time. I had mentioned it to her before, like, hey, I've dealt with this. I didn't really get into details. But I called her up and I was like, Mom, like, I got to talk to you. I got to let this out to somebody. I said, basically what happened was I was on this, doing this, and I invited this girl to my house last night, and we had sex. And I've just been in this deep, dark hole all day. I don't know what to do. I've been praying. I feel distant. And I wish I would have done that when I was 16 or 17.
Yeah.
Because my mom's reaction to that was nothing but love and kindness.
Oh.
I thought my mom was going to tear me a new one. Like, you've preached about this, you've done this, you've done that, blah, blah.
Well, it sounds like she's a Christian lady.
Yeah.
She is. And
But I mean a real Christian.
She surprised me because, sometimes...
Judge ye not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and she surprised me really because I didn't know, like... Because sometimes she doesn't talk about how deeply she thinks about religion and Jesus and all that. But I remember she just said... Chandler, I mean, I can't say I'm not disappointed. She said, but I love you.
Yeah.
And I'm here for you, whatever you need to get through this. We're here for you. We're here to hold your hand through. I mean, this is me at 25 years old saying this. And I'm like, she's like, I will hold you, whatever you need. She said, and like, don't think, and I kept hearing this repeated, don't think that you're anything less because of the sin you committed. Because in the eyes of God, you're not, right? It's like it says, and I think it's in Romans 8:1. It's like, therefore, there's no condemnation in those that are in Christ Jesus, right? And because of that, that's not saying, oh, you can do whatever you want. That's saying, like, no, like, though you sin, and though you still need to go and sin no more, like the woman we saw, in John, where they, he told them cast
the stones,
right?
Yeah.
What did he say at the end of that? He said, go and sin no more,
Right.
He said, go and repent. Right. And so it's like there's no condemnation. That there's what I was kind of getting at earlier was there's a difference between guilt and shame. There's a guilt for me doing that, but there's not shame from that.
Right.
There's not shame that's holding me down. Shame is what holds you down. And so the advice I would give to if there's someone.
Well, it was shame that kept you from telling anybody all those years.
Exactly.
Right.
So I would say to answer your question.
But he was maturing. That's what I was
Yeah.
at.
Yes.
Emotionally, mentally, that a 17-year-old doesn't
Yeah.
have yet.
Yeah.
It's a vastly different admission process, coming clean and taking the risk of being torn to pieces. But instead, you receive love.
Yeah, and then I'll tell you this again. A couple of months, probably about 7-8 months later, I'm working at a church. Okay, I'm outside of state, and I'm working at a church out in New Mexico, and I'm still dealing with pornography. It's still an issue in my life, and there was a situation that came up. Basically, I got back to the same situation. I didn't have a hookup with this girl, but I did, exchange some Snapchats with her, and she found out I worked at a church. She sent those Snapchats to the church,
Right. And that got you into trouble.
and that got me fired, basically fired from the church.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to open and talk about this because this is just part of my story.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years from now, this is
right.
going to be my testimony.
Yeah.
And it is my testimony even right now, what God has done in my life even since then. But I know that at that point, I just kept remembering, like, God is not done with you, right? And, like, you talk about the
This
shame.
is the start,
Yeah,
almost.
yeah, it was the shame. And so, like, for me, I was so scared. Like, 2 or 3 weeks before that happened, I actually went to my superior and I said, hey, man, this is one of the pastors that's ahead of me. He's like my boss. I said, dude, I got to come clean. I said, I'm struggling with pornography. I knew if I said that, I might lose my job because I'm working at a church. I knew if I said that, that might cost me all that I've worked for up to that point. Well, it wasn't really all that I worked for. It's what God had put me in, right? But like, I knew that was a
huge risk.
huge risk. And I still had to do it. And
How did he respond?
He responded by saying, well, that's not good, first of all. He said, we don't
Pornography bad.
Pornography bad, UK bad, pornography bad.
Can you go into details?
But he looked at me. He said, well, we have to go talk to, you're already at church, so we got to talk to HR, talk to our bosses, see what we need to go from here. And the plan was at that point, maybe a day or two later, I talked with HR, and they were going to get me a counselor. And they were actually good. The church was going to pay for a counselor. They were going to go in, and they were going to, help me through this process. They were going to do it with love and kindness. And I was like, man, like, and then I ended up, and then 2 or 3, a month or two later, I ended up screwing up and just falling back into that while I was back home in Tennessee. I was out of my element again. I was back in the environment that I was sick in. It's hard to heal in the environment that you got sick in. And so for me, like, I say all that to say this. To answer your question, if I was a 16, 17-year-old kid that was dealing and struggling with pornography, and I could give them some advice, the first thing I would do is go to someone you trust. It doesn't have to be your parents. Go to someone you trust that is a mentor, not just your friends, because they're going to look at you and they're going to say, oh, well, I struggle with it too. It's nothing. Or they might even look at you and say, well, I struggle with that too. I want to feel
which ones do you watch?
Exactly. I would go to someone you trust, a mentor. If that's your father, that's your father. If that's your mother, that's your mother. Right? If that's your uncle, if that's your
dominatrix,
if that's your pastor, if that's
your pimp,
something of that nature, like someone you trust, go to them and say, listen, I don't know who to talk to about this. I don't know how to fix this, but I am deeply addicted to pornography, and do not hold out on the details.
Yeah.
Because it's easy in this culture to say, oh, I'm addicted to pornography, and
to minimize it.
Yeah. Don't try to blow it over.
No.
Say, I'm addicted to pornography. This is the extent of my addiction, right? So, if it led to other things, but this is the extent of my addiction.
In opening up to that key individual, then the hope is that you have received.
Yes. That's why I say someone you trust.
Like your mother did, right?
That's why I say someone you trust. And I would hope that if it's a pastor you're opening up to, that would be someone that's going to be loving and not going to throw the book at you, right? I can't promise that being a Christian my whole life. I can say every opportunity I've had with that, because I actually did go open up to my pastor after I talked to my mother, because I had a really good relationship with my pastor, because I was actually working on being a pastor at some point, and I talked to him a lot about it. And so I went to him, and he was also like, hey, man, like with pastors, he said, you have no idea how big of an epidemic this is with pastors.
Oh, we have an idea.
Yeah. Well, not in that regard. Not with the Catholic pastor. I'm just talking about.
No, I know all of them.
Yeah. Not because
celibacy is unusual.
Well, pastors. Well, here's the thing: in Protestant churches, pastors are not necessarily celibate. They do marry, right? And they do have wife and all that kind of stuff. But
the reason the internet exists is because of pornography. Yes.
Well, the first two things. It's any new form of media that comes by. I learned this in college when I was going through communication. The first two avenues.
Didn't Al Gore invent it?
Pornography?
No, the internet.
Well, I had another reason to hate Al Gore. Anyways,
the internet.
But the two channels you were saying.
The two organizations or two things that always pop up on a new form of media, and it's for first use for is religious purposes and pornographic purposes.
And then not in that order.
Sometimes in that order.
Not in that order.
You're right.
It dwarfs
you're right.
it.
But those are the two channels. When the internet first came around, the two biggest channels that took it over were religion.
Were pornography
and religion.
That's the ratio.
But they try to take that over. Yeah.
What was your advice to the
let's get back to that.
Let's bring this.
So the first thing, because he's now married and he loves this young woman and wants to,
not
have a
be
marriage,
able to have boners,
was he needed to come clean with her because she needs to be part of the solution to help him.
Gotcha. So what's the
because she's now
she needs to watch the videos and then act out the scenarios.
Well, that's not exactly
that would be the opposite of healthy right there. Okay, so I have this question. So I've not dealt with this part of it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a single male. I've been on one date since I went on one date in high school. That's the last date I've been on in my life.
Well, just wait till this podcast posts, and then you're not going to have that problem anymore.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So if someone's in a relationship, someone's married, is there a difference there? Like, how do you handle this? If you're in a relationship, do you maybe even just break that off for your own healing?
No.
Or in this case, with marriage, you don't.
You break off the pornography.
First of all, yes. He's
as
recently
you're
married
from pornography.
So he wants the marriage to work. He wants to have a family. That's why
absolutely.
Married, right?
Yeah.
So that's his number one, by far, priority. His young wife. They're 1 year apart in age.
Yeah.
So mid-20s. So I said, look, this is going to require for honesty from you, humility. If you are spiritual, talk to God on your own, talk to Jesus. But you must come clean with your wife and let her know that you had this problem for a long time.
Yeah.
That she is not at fault for anything. Because one of the things he shared was she blamed herself.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
I was not
we
doing
saved
enough.
it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm inexperienced. I don't know how to satisfy a man.
Yeah.
I don't know. So she's feeling down on herself. So he has to be humble and come clean to make sure that she's not feeling that way. And then come on and do things with her on a daily basis that formerly would have occupied the opportunities to misbehave with the pornography. So
you're saying replace?
Yes, with quality time with her.
Yes.
Let's go for a walk.
So in marriage, I think that's very healthy.
Yeah.
Is there in a relationship?
Honey, I'm
early
getting off
relationship,
work at 5.
Yeah.
Meet me at work, and we're gonna go and get
So question: do you think early relationship where maybe it's not you're not like seeing each other every day, you're not living with each other, do you think maybe it's wise to say, hey, I'm dealing with this.
Yes,
I need to step back
heal
and,
myself before our relationship can grow in a genuine fashion.
In marriage, of
authentic.
course, the last thing you want to do is break up a marriage.
No, you want
Exactly.
you want to keep
that there.
and say,
Yeah.
you are my savior.
Yeah.
You are going to help me. Okay? God is going to save me so I can be a great husband.
Yeah.
And my healing involves you. Because when I share with you my pain, my sin, my suffering,
Yeah.
okay, our bond grows. It's a non-sexual growth, meaning it's a bonding, it's a meshing together, right? And then on top of that, if they have to bring in someone else, okay, with wisdom
Yeah.
to provide some guidance,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, a parent, a family member, pastor,
Another couple.
Yeah, that maybe has gone through it,
Yeah.
that can help them,
I've seen that a lot.
and then work on their own sexual relationship within that context of healing and helping the wife. Perhaps you never know. The wife may come clean and say, "I have the same problem too,"
Yeah.
or "I have sinned too."
Yeah.
She may have those kinds of prior to the marriage issues.
Yeah. So going from that into the healing process, right? So one thing, I've read this book and I haven't finished reading it, but it's this book called The Freedom Fight by Ted Scheimer. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He's a Christian. He's Dallas Theological Seminary, I think. And he talks about, in the first part of this book, he talks about the fact that it's not just a mental battle to get over. It's a spiritual battle.
Yes.
And so one of the things he says is like a lot of people do one or the other. They don't do both.
You have to do both.
You have to do both.
Yeah.
When in
It's part of the healing.
Talk to me as far as someone who is a doctor,
Yeah.
who deals with people like this. What does it look to do both of those at the same time? What does it look like to heal mentally and spiritually for this thing that you're dealing with? Because a lot of times that's a spiritual battle you're going through.
Yes.
More than it is a mental battle.
So it means you take your partner by the hand, you come clean with what your problem is. No detail is left untold. Okay? And you say,
Because marriage is the most intimate thing you can have.
correct. We as a couple need to go in front of God and ask for help in the humblest way. So we're going to be, as I said, strategies to socialize, to occupy our time. So when I feel weak, you're the person that I reach for, and vice versa. And then we become not only ourselves spiritually connected, which is the mandate from God for the marriage, but also we become tied in with our church, with our friends who are part of that community that have the same priorities,
Yes.
which is spiritual health, because it's called alignment,
Yes.
like this. Mental health, physical health, but you cannot attain it unless you have spiritual health.
Is that the glue that holds
That
the
is a
mental-
glue. It's in the middle.
Yeah.
It's where the band of my watch is. Spiritual, mental health, physical health. You know, the sugar and your cholesterol and your diet and all those
And
things we
exercise.
discuss, exercise and good hobbies and intellectual pursuits and all, but it's here that holds that. And this is what I believe is lacking in the world.
In the world
It's
today.
just that spiritual
This.
glue. Yeah,
It's like this bone. Okay,
Yeah.
my hand is being held. You could say by my
It-
elbow.
it's-
No, it's not really the
like-
elbow. It's like the radius.
It's like people don't know Bhagavan works the earth.
That too. Yes, we had a prior podcast with with Will, right?
Yeah, go.
Where he
go
spent some
check,
time.
With Thrill.
Yeah, not to toot our own horn,
So
but go check that podcast.
So this
out.
this is
yeah.
an easy metaphor
yeah.
because unless this becomes fortified, this falls.
Yeah,
And that cannot
absolutely.
exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we fall back into similar circles, and that leads into a distancing of the relationship, the loss of that harmony, and eventually the breakup.
Yeah.
So when people today, I had a walk-in late. One of my second last patient is 88 years old. He came to interview me to see if I'm the correct doctor for him because his other doctor moved on. And he shared with me that his wife died less than 4 weeks ago. Married 63 years.
Wow.
And he told me his story. I listened to him, and he told me what medications he's on, and he's a herbalist and believes he doesn't like pharmaceuticals, and he'd rather at 88 be treated with minimal medication.
Yeah.
So, fine. And then I listened to his heart, and I said, "You have a beautiful heart." And he said, "I know."
Oh, I thought you were going to say you have a porn addiction.
Not for him.
Okay, sorry.
Well,
I thought you were tying the
might have
podcast
gave-
together.
Well, you might have given
That's a good one.
You might have given him a heart attack, depending on how religious he
Okay,
was.
but I'll
how
tell you-
legalistic he was.
What
so he
he-
knows he had a beautiful heart.
He said, "You think I can get on testosterone?" I go, "I got the pellets, I got the injection, I got the cream, I got the pills." He goes, "I'll take the cream."
Yeah. But going on with that, yeah. But
This has been the
yeah.
Leverage Podcast, starring Davio with our producer guest Chandler, and of course Dr. Suave as all.
Did I take a bow? Is that how this works?
Well, I guess he's hungry. I think.
yeah. Me?
You know, it's funny.
No. Him?
The grumbling of his gastrointestinal system
just
saying,
funny.
"I want dinner. Let's stop this."
It's funny how quick Chandler is to cut off the podcast when he's the producer, but when he's the guest, somehow
It keeps
I haven't heard one person to call the time.
Yes.
Oh, but well. Here's
Just
the
a
thing.
coincidence that our longest ever podcast.
Maybe
was
our
when Chandler
assistant
was on, I
producer
guess.
is watching porn.
What'd you say?
Maybe our assistant producer is watching porn.
Daniel, where are you at?
I see.
Daniel would hear more.
No, but-
See, even Daniel would hear more of the
So-
conversation, you know?
Anyways,
Oh, man. Yeah.
so someone who has been married for 63 years has had a connection.
Wow.
And that connection has been, as we've already delved into, a spiritual one. And so he explained to myself that the toughest challenge for him is that he's alone. I said, "But you're not alone." He goes, "No, I know I'm not alone. She's with me. I talk to her every day. And I still have my church
So
family."
early signs of dementia.
I would, okay. You, he wants you to say that patient has vascular dementia.
It's
Let's delve into it.
like the ending scene of Forrest Gump, where he's like, it's kind of like the wind. I can't feel it, but I can see it.
Yeah.
See it.
See it. There you go. So,
He's smart, Jenny. Very smart.
but anyway, so he.
I did that a little too well, didn't I?
You have a little of the Tom Hanks in you. Tom Hanks was fabulous.
That's interesting. I always love that story though, because they wanted the kid in that movie. They wanted him to sound like Tom Hanks sounded,
Yes.
and Tom was like, "Why don't I just sound like he sounded?"
He sounds
And
great. He's perfect.
literally the whole thing with Tom Hanks
Was
that
the kid.
The kid.
was the kid.
Yeah, he was
the kid.
perfect.
He's like, "Where's your dad work?" He works at a grease factory. And it's
It was
like,
perfect.
why not? This dude is, it's. I love hearing that story.
Here's
Anyways,
my
go
Tom
ahead.
Hanks story.
Oh,
So back in, I guess it was 19,
when do we get him on the podcast?
1995, 96, no,
Wh-
95.
Wayne, we got to get Wayne
No,
on the podcast.
94. I'm going to try to get Wayne. 94, I was on call at Methodist Hospital, Houston, Texas, large hospital. When a lady, I got called to the ER. She had what is called an SVT, AV nodal reentrant tachycardia. Heart was going at probably 180 beats a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to see her. Her name is Marilyn. Last name Lovell. Lovell.
I just said love her.
I bring her in. I put her on an IV to a special medication called cardizem to slow down her heart. I get her on the 10th floor at Fonder Brown Building at Methodist Hospital, a very beautiful hospital. So she says to me, "You've been very nice, and I feel a lot better now that I got my heart rate down to 60, 70 beats per minute, which is normal, down from 180. My heart was racing for a few hours, and I thought I was going to pass out. So my daughter called the ambulance and so on. My husband is not here. Well, where's your husband? He goes, Bahamas. Oh, well, we should call him. I said, okay. I got his number. He's at the hotel, whatever. So I guess the nurse calls and got him on the phone. They talk. Says he wants to talk to you. I said, okay. His name is Jim. Okay, hi, Jim. I'm Jim Lovell. Do you know who I am? No. I'm the astronaut from Apollo 13. I'm the actually captain of the Apollo 13.
Not the Apollo 13 movie, the actual Apollo 13.
The actual.
Wow.
He was with Tom Cruise and I believe his wife, Rita
Tom
Wilson.
Hanks.
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, not
Yeah.
Tom Cruise.
That's a totally different
promoting
religion.
the movie. I think they were in the Bahamas, somewhere in the Caribbean.
Yeah. Wow.
So I got to talk to him. He goes, well, I'm taking the next flight. I'm heading to the airport now to see my wife, Marilyn Lovell.
Yeah.
So I guess I was there all night. I talked to her. I was there on call, so 36-hour shifts or so. So I spent a lot of time talking to her, blah, blah. Next day after my rounds, I'm heading the cardiology team, doing rounds in the ICU and various floors. So my team, I come to her room, and there she is, and there's the husband that I talked to some 12 hours earlier.
Yeah.
Just to say, hey, she's under control. She's doing fine. She's going to be fine. We're probably going to do an AV nodal, ablation with radio frequency ablation. It'll be a 1-2 hour procedure. She'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I talked to my EP guy, electrophysiologist, fine. So he was the nicest guy. And, he tells me his whole story about Apollo 13. And they just finished filming the movie and they're promoting it.
What you mean the movie with Kubrick?
Was he the
The guy who staged the whole Apollo program.
Oh, so he was with Tom Hanks because of the Apollo 13
Yeah,
movie.
yes.
They were
Okay.
promoting it in the
Wow.
Bahamas. And his wife comes in and I take care of her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's why they call him Dr. Suave.
Suave.
this was a while back when I was a young, very attractive young man doing my cardiology fellowship. And so
You're still
of
an
course,
attractive man,
thank
just not
you.
young, right?
Yes. And so, of course, he's like, my daughter just got divorced. She's coming in later. He's trying to hook me up with his daughter.
The level?
Yeah.
Then you could have been able
They had a house in Houston because of,
Right.
NASA,
Yeah,
space,
yeah,
all
yeah.
that, right? So, now I go have lunch with them and so on. And anyways, Tom Hanks called Marilyn and, it was a very interesting,
So how many times has that happened to you
a bunch,
that you've been tried to hook up by the parents?
lots.
all the
lot.
time. This
Yeah.
guy, you couldn't-
Honestly,
when I was younger.
I get that a lot because I'm not a very attractive man. But I was waiting for y'all to interrupt me, but I guess y'all would believe that too.
No, we didn't believe it.
Okay, good.
I, for the record, I don't judge the looks of men.
Okay, good.
Look at that.
Get that.
It's very
okay.
mature view.
Very mature. I love it. I love it. But like
I save all my judgment for women.
But see, I'm surprised. So I'll get to know older people, and they'll be like, I have a granddaughter.
Yes.
That I'm like, because I'm very naturally like just charming, and the southern
Well,
accent, the southern accent gets me into trouble sometimes.
And you're the right age.
Yes. You're
That
right,
goes
right,
away.
Yes.
Nobody's offering me their daughters anymore.
Because you
They're
could,
like gray hair, gray. You
could-
want to go to Bahamas with us? Like
yes. You could go 5 years younger, 5 years older, so you have a nice
Right.
10
See,
year.
at 27, the way I look at it, and I think we got to wrap it up. I hear you, Daniel.
You're in your physical prime.
I am, to me, and I'm getting healthier. Like I don't know if you know this, but like I weigh about
You
two.
look like you lost a half a pound since a month ago.
Yeah, probably, but also, thank
Only fast food once a day instead of twice.
yeah, pretty much. Well, actually, I used to weigh about 2 years ago. I weighed about 330.
Wow. So yeah, you've
And,
done
and
well.
so I've
You're getting there.
Yeah. So and we could talk about that in another
Yeah,
podcast.
we'll
I
do
would love
that.
to talk
We'll do
about-
a
yeah.
chubby bunny
But,
weight
yeah.
loss program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I have lost a lot of weight. So like I got to be more attractive in the past 2 years, and I've had a lot more females that are interested in me.
Of
Of course.
Some of them I'm not as interested in. We'll get into that later. But I get a lot of parents and grandparents.
Absolutely.
They're like, "Hey, I have a daughter," and I'm like, which I'm always wary of, because if they have a daughter and they're trying to say that's because they are desperate to get them dating. And,
No, not necessarily. No,
you
no,
know,
no.
I mean, it's
They want
She
to find
might.
a young,
She might be beautiful.
she might be a diamond in the rough that's just not got the
No, not
right
even
person.
diamond in the rough. Here's the thing: the most beautiful women are not having the most sex.
No.
That's we can talk about that on another podcast.
Yeah, that's
but
definitely for
yeah,
another
yeah.
podcast. Yeah. So,
But
are
anyway,
you-
so
yeah.
they've tried.
Are y'all gonna have me
yeah.
on again, or y'all just gonna kick me to the
No,
curb now?
we'll have you on.
Well, it
man.
depends if you keep breathing in the microphone, then no.
Yes. But
You
anyway,
talking about this mic or that?
No,
mic?
no. When you're producing,
So produce it.
so it's all about alignment.
you've been great here. I haven't heard it once.
Guys, here's for the leverage.
Here's for leverage.
Get aligned,
Get a line.
mental, physical, spiritual health,
Spiritual health.
and move forward.
Move forward.
And that's the moment.
That's the
Till
leverage.
next time.
That's until next time, everybody. That was
Yeah.
great.